it is. Well, welcome everybody to the White Sand Self-Care Community Group. I am your host and resource for self-care, Laura Cross, and connection and collaborations to others. And I am so thrilled to have with me today Jill Sitnick. She is an advocate for transformative healing. She is a wealth of experience in educational technology, and she has a personal journey that exemplifies courage and resilience. And we had such a great time making her episode that's coming up this Monday on Mindful Mondays. That's called Psychedelics for PTSD healing. So Jill, thank you for joining us today.
Oh my gosh, Laura. So first of all, thank you for chatting with me today. And thank you for the episode. I agree. I think we had an absolute blast. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know we don't want to give it all away, but there's a lot of misnomers, or whatever you want to tell people a little bit about your journey. And a journey. So you have the Journey Sage YouTube channel. So maybe you can fill us in a little bit more on how all that came about.
Yeah. So in our episode, I wound up telling Laura all about my story of healing childhood trauma-induced PTSD with the psychedelic MDMA. I was diagnosed when I was in my late 40s, and it was a complete shock to me because, probably like many people out there, I just thought I didn't have a great childhood. I didn't really understand what trauma was and how it impacted my day-to-day. And after the diagnosis, I had the opportunity to participate in psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, which is set to be approved by the FDA in 2024. And I just want to be a voice that explains what this therapy is, demystifies psychedelics, and just kind of explains to people what it is, what it isn't, because we're going to see a lot more buzz in the future once it's approved and starts being offered.
Yeah. And I think you also go into a little more detail too in the episode about what people can expect and what not to expect. Of course, I'm sure the experience will be different for everybody, but you share your experience with it.
Yeah, because part of the demystifying psychedelics is taking away that image. I was a child of the 80s. I have the egg in the frying pan image, right? And part of my goal is to demystify that was the, if the egg in the frying pan was one experience, mine was completely on the other side and was all full of healing and losing the PTSD, losing feeling suicidal. It was just the complete opposite of kind of all the stereotypes in my head. And so, yeah, we talked about that pretty deeply, didn't we? About how MDMA really helped. Yeah, that's right. We did. Yeah,
we did. And it's cool that you bring that up because, yeah, I'm also an 80s child. So, when you hear psychedelics, the first thing I think of is like the 70s, the flower child, thing. And I think a lot of people have that, or they have what's been fed to them, from media, and they don't know the full spectrum of it.
Absolutely. But I was one of those people. When my therapist mentioned it to me, I had like all the neon in my head. I was like, okay, let's throw on the neon tie-dye shirt, right? But long story short, and we do talk about this, the clinical trials with MDMA and with psilocybin or magic mushrooms, the FDA has labeled both of them breakthrough therapies to help people with PTSD and with depression. And so it just requires voices like me, people like you being so kind as to let me share my story to help educate people about the potential for these substances to stop a lot of hurt and pain in the world.
Yeah, and I found it fascinating because, like I said, you don't know what you don't know. And I'm glad you were willing to come on and able to share that, because I believe people need the proper education or resources so that they can make their own decision. We're not telling people one way or another what to go or what's going to work for them, but I am all about providing resources and that connection and collaboration. And I don't think you can do that unless you can kind of like hear all sides or, hear from somebody's experience. So I know you do share with them that you no longer qualify for PTSD. So it did help you.
Yes, I had 3 journeys over the course of a year, intense psychotherapy. And after 3 journeys, after that year, I no longer qualified. I think of it as I healed the capital T traumas I still had some other trauma. I still work through things. I'm still occasionally talking to my therapist, but I'm very, very clear that the suicidal tendencies, the feeling of life is out of my control or the universe is out to get me, some very common themes between veterans, child abuse folks, people who have experienced child abuse, people who have experienced a trauma, like a feeling of lack of control, the universe is kind of out to get us.
Mm-hmm.
That's gone. And that was the healing modality for MDMA for PTSD for me. I wrote a memoir, I wrote a workbook, and the YouTube channel is the channel that I wish had been around when I was going through the therapy, because I answer the questions that I get all the time from people. So that's kind of my way of giving back to the world for no longer having that PTSD diagnosis.
Yeah. And that channel is The Journey Sage, correct? On YouTube?
Yeah, on
Yep.
YouTube. You get to see me talking more.
And I think you interact a lot too with your fan base, so they can ask you questions or ask you to certain topics, then you just make more new videos for them,
Well,
explain them.
that's been happening. Yeah, people have been reaching out on my website. I actually have a form where people can reach out and they'll either ask me a question and I'll address it in a YouTube video, a YouTube short. But some people have actually just wanted to talk to me and kind of understand it a little bit deeper as they are making decisions for their mental health moving forward. So that's also an option too.
Yeah. And I think we all know mental health has become a huge, not that it hasn't always been around, it has, but I think it's coming more and more to the surface nowadays.
The stigma, that's another reason to talk about it. I had such shame. And even sometimes now it's difficult sometimes talking about, mom suicides, dad's beating, the drugs, the food insecurity. These aren't fun topics.
No.
But if we talk about them more and take away the shame, maybe somebody who is afraid to talk about their stuff is hearing me tell me my story and it can help them. That's the goal. That's totally the goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So your memoirs, can you tell us more about that and where people can get that from?
Yeah, so my pretty little memoir, that's actually me on that cover. An artist rendered it, so it looks a lot super, super pretty, right? What I did was I wrote, there's a lot of information out there right now in terms of the research, because, clinical trials and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know about anybody else, but I don't find that helpful for me. So what I did was I wrote the memoir, and you are like in the sidecar with me as I was going through the therapy. I would say 98% of it is at the time of the writing. Maybe 2% is hindsight 2020 kind of thing. But you get to be in the sidecar with me during that year of healing, because the entire year that I did it, I journaled like crazy. So you get my interpretations of my healing, you get journal entries, and you even get transcripts from some of my journeys with my doctor and my guide, because that's what I didn't know before I went into this therapy. How do those journeys really work? What's it like? And so I give you a glimpse of my healing experience in the memoir.
And you have a workbook also that goes along with it?
So you get to kind of pretend to be a patient with my amazing therapist, because the 8 prompts in the workbook that I provide are the prompts that she and I used for me to set my healing intentions, for me to, and Laura, you know this because you already talking to me, I do this all the time, for me to understand what the trauma in my body was saying. So yeah, the workbook was my way of addressing a lot of the questions I get are about intentions, because we all know people are flying down to other countries to do a lot of medicine work. So the intentions were some of the most questions I got. And so I wrote the workbook to help folks out.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic what you're doing. And yeah, you and I were talking about that because people don't realize when they're getting stressed, their shoulders are, we just know we have pain and stuff later in our neck and back, and we don't think about it. It's just because we're all stressed and the shoulders are like crunched up instead of being down. So if anybody's wondering what we're doing.
It'll make sense in the episode, I promise.
Oh, yes, it will. Yes, it will. And we go into a lot more detail. So how do you work with people mostly? Do you do any kind of coaching or just help them walk through? How does that work?
Well, so right now, because we're still awaiting FDA approval, I simply chat with people or answer questions because what people choose to do on their own, I would rather they at least be informed. I actually am in a coaching program. I think in the future, I would love to facilitate and help people through their own journeys just because I've been there. I know what it's like. I know the work involved. It's not a turnkey thing. It can be tough. And I think for people to know that the person they're working with has had that experience. So that's in the future at some point. At some point.
Sure. Yeah, and I always found it easier to work with someone that you know has experienced it or can somewhat relate to what you've gone through or experienced, rather than someone that just read something and said, oh, well, you should do this. I'm like, but so you can at least meet people where they're at, because we're all in a different place and we all know everything different is, we all need something different. Not the same thing is going to work for everybody.
And I'm also one to say, okay, like my level of PTSD, going to see Jill would probably not have been beneficial. I'm the first one to say, work with a qualified therapist if you have some intense trauma. That's, to me, that is one of the learnings from this whole experience. The psychedelics were 20% of the process. Psychotherapy was 80% of the process.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's a mouthful, spitting that all out, which we kind of joke about a little bit in the show. The whole psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. I'm like, that's a mouthful. But I'm glad it just rolls off the tongue for you. So obviously you can tell you've been doing it for a while. It's very easy for you.
I had to. You know what? I wanted to make sure I was very specific with what my story was, what my healing journey was. So yeah, psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy.
Yeah. AKA PEP, which we won't say about. Anyway, so what is the best way for people to meet with, to engage with you?
Yeah, so check out the YouTube channel. You're free to post questions there. If you'd like it to be a little bit more private, head over to my website. I have a nice little form that you can fill out and send me a question via email, or you can actually book a time to chat with me if you'd like, straight on the website, little Calendly. Oh my gosh, as I butcher that word, Calendly link. And the more questions I get from folks, the better the education is for everybody. So I fully encourage, ask the questions.
Absolutely. And I want to encourage everybody to check out Jill's episode. So you will get a lot more detail on her journey, what the MDMA is, and a whole lot more details. We go into it. It's almost an hour long episode. So yeah,
and it was
we definitely
fun.
get to go
We
into
had
details.
A good chat.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I hope everybody joins us. It'll be airing this Monday on December 4th at 1 p.m. Central Time. Again, that's Psychedelics for PTSD healing. And Jill is our guest speaker. As you can see, she's wonderful, easy to talk to. So I hope everybody joins. And we will make sure we put all of her links in the comments and stuff so that anyone that's suffering any kind of trauma or PTSD, and they don't want to mention it in the group, that's fine. Message her, go to these websites and get a hold of her. The whole thing is to have resources and connection for you and for anybody. And a lot of times the holidays is an especially tough time for people.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Laura, thank you. We do need to find other excuses to chat because it's an absolute delight.
Oh, we will. We'll stay in touch. I've got other things coming up too. Okay. But anyone, thank you everyone for bearing with us. We had a little, speaking of Calendly, we had a little calendar interruption, so we delayed the live, but nevertheless, we're here. So thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.